Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. We have more NFL news, NFL receiver news. So last Saturday, the Steelers lost to the Bengals, and George Pickens was seen arguing with a fan. He had a rough night last Saturday. He had one catch for only 6 yards. So he was very frustrated in that game, but sort to report on the trend of his past transgressions as far as disappointment goes. There's been a lot of film breakdown from analysts saying that he's not finishing out plays that he doesn't expect to get the football. He's not committing all the way to the plays, and it's kind of affecting the rest of the plays sometimes. So they're questioning his lack of effort or his effort on the field. Now, wide receivers always go through some kind of drama, whether it be not getting the football enough, not being considered team players, being considered divas. But there's a two-sided coin, as I reported before, on being a wide receiver. Like I said, I've never been a wide receiver, but, analyzing the game and seeing analysts break down the game, it's understandable, or you can understand why they act the way they do, even though I'm not condoning it, but like for them to rely on the football and for them to be in such a dependent position, similar to NBA center. You're relying on someone to pass you the basketball, and then you you have to be in the right spot. 'Cause like I said, a lot of people are cutting off or cherry picking off. You getting the ball to the big man because he can easily score. So they're trying to make it difficult if they can. Similar to a wide receiver. Wide receiver has to depend on the center to hike the ball efficiently to the quarterback. The quarterback has to rely on blocking. And then the receiver also has to rely on the quarterback to make the read, to see them open or to throw them open and to make an accurate pass. So there's a lot of things that must be done before receivers get even a shot at the football, because if you drop it, we know, people are going to lose trust in you, and it's going to be difficult to get the football again unless you're wide open, things like that. But nevertheless, fans have been requesting, Steelers fans have been requesting that the Steelers trade George Pickens, which this isn't the first time it happened for a receiver, and definitely not a receiver in the Pittsburgh organization. The Pittsburgh organization does a wonderful job, and I'm probably underestimating wonderful. It's probably an exceptional job of finding these receiver talents, even in later rounds. But for some reason, most of their receivers their relationships haven't ended, amicably. It's always turmoil at the end. There's always some drama surrounding, and it's always some kind of trade or release that is unwarranted before their end of their careers. Most of the time, these receivers are at their peak of their career or ascending up. But like I said, for some reason, the Pittsburgh Steelers doesn't, they don't pick receivers that it ends well. There is almost always some kind of sad ending to it, or some kind of uneven ending. Just to give you a history on the receivers from the Steelers, they have Antonio Brown, which was a 6th-round pick. They found a diamond in the rough. They found someone out of Central Michigan that was under-scouted in high school, and then he was under-scouted at the pro level. But they did their homework and found out how good of a receiver he was. He put up these crazy numbers, Hall of Fame type career, and it didn't end well. It ended very badly. We know Antonio Brown went on the Facebook Live while Mike Tomlin was doing his speech at halftime. Well, after the game, after they beat the Chiefs and they were going to play New England. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. And then there were a lot of issues with Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger that ultimately, they're going to pick the quarterback in those situations, and they did. And Antonio Brown ended up going to the Raiders, which ended very badly. He didn't even play a game for them. Ended it in the offseason. And he ended up in New England, where he ended up getting in trouble there with an off the field issue. And then he went to Tampa Bay, winning a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. But that situation ended badly as well, as he ended up getting undressed on the field and leaving the field and quitting in the middle of the game. So that was the Antonio Brown situation. And don't forget, there's Chase Claypool, who was drafted out of second round. He had a bar fight off the field. He had an own celebration penalty. Well, not penalty, but he celebrated on the field when it was in a 2-minute huddle, trying to get the ball snapped quickly. And then that kind of caused issues for him. So it was a bunch of issues regarding him as well. And then also Deontay Jackson, he had exchanged with Mitch Trubisky, and he was accused of taking plays off as well. And we know that he had issues catching the football on the field as well. So there was a lot of issues with that. And then, of course, George Pickens, who the second-round draftee out of Georgia that they picked, they were saying, he was taking plays off. And then he was also fined for his incident with Jordan Lewis from Dallas Cowboys earlier this year. And he took off his helmet before he left, before the end of a play or before leaving the field, and had a penalty this year. So there's a lot of issues regarding the Steelers wide receivers. Is Mike Tomlin to blame for these things? Partially, because we know a coach controls the atmosphere of the locker room. At the same time, he can't really make decisions of who can he cut and who can he bring in. Unlike Bill Belichick when he was in New England, he can let these players go. He can bring players in. He had total control of the organization. But partially, you have to blame him just because of the atmosphere that he's letting these players kind of, be themselves to an extent. So you can be yourself, but, emotions have to be in check too. And a lot of these players' emotions are in check, and we don't know if he's checking it or not because, like I said, most of those things probably happen off the field, in the locker room, in practice, things like that. But another thing that people don't take in consideration about the Mike Tomlin situation is these people are adults, so he can only, give them advice or instruct them what to do. But at the end of the day, if they don't do it, they're adults. He can't really control anything about it. It's up to them to make that decision and to control their emotions. It's a very tough situation for any coach to be in, especially a coach as tenured as Mike Tomlin, who has never had a losing season. He hasn't had a lot of success in the postseason, and this is probably the reason why, because he doesn't have a team that's united, a team that's up front, a team that rallies together, right? It takes a lot to win a championship, and everybody has to be on one accord. Back when he had Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, there were issues with the flag, with the Pledge of Allegiance. They do the national anthem at the beginning of the games. They were going to be united and stay in the locker room. Some people stood out the locker room. Some people were on the field. It was just a big mess. And it shows you why they didn't win all those years. They had so much talent. Big Ben, Hall of Fame quarterback. Le'Veon Bell, one of the best running backs in the game at the time. Antonio Brown, Hall of Fame type talent. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that camaraderie, what do you have? To be winning the playoffs, especially if you go behind in the playoffs, you're going to need a lot of camaraderie, a lot of people with high spirits. You're going to need strong leadership. They never had that. Big Ben was never seen as a good leader. He was always a blame deflector, similar to Aaron Rodgers, and that made the team tumultuous and, like they say, a fish rots from the head down. So if you have that leader that is toxic, it's going to trickle down to everyone underneath it. And that's what happened with the Steelers organization. And hopefully that's not happening with Mike Tomlin because, like I said, he's a great coach. He's like one of the most tenured coaches in the league right now, especially since Belichick had left. And he's at the University of North Carolina now. But this situation probably won't get better. And George Pickens is facing a payday, is wanting a big payday. They're going to have to fully assess the situation and bring him in if they want to do that. Because a lot of people was telling them not to pay Antonio Brown, and they did, and we saw what happened as a result of that situation. But hopefully George Pickens' situation would be different. He's very young right now. Antonio Brown was underdrafted and underrated, so I feel like he always had a chip on his shoulder. George Pickens was picked in the second round, so that might not be so much. But George Pickens has to realize too, he didn't have a lot of quality quarterbacks his first couple of years in the league. He only, until now, he had a serviceable quarterback, but that's on the back end of his career. He never had a quarterback like a Big Ben in his prime, like Antonio Brown had. So maybe his situation would be different if he had that. but nevertheless, he has to check the emotions at the door because, you can get out of this league quickly. This league goes on without anybody. Tom Brady retired. The league is still going. And all these great players that played the game left the game, and the game still kept going without batting an eye. Unlike a basketball, when Jordan left, the league took a little hit, but the NFL doesn't take that hit. It's based off of team success and not individual players so much. So, um, you know, uh, prayers go out to George Pickens, and hopefully he can figure this out. And then I'll keep an eye on this topic, and hopefully he figures it out and gets a new contract.